Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Liane Wood, a registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. Let's dive in. Well, welcome back to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. I'm Liane Wood, and I'm so glad you're here today. I want you to picture something for a second. You're still seeing clients, your practice is running, the work is good, but you're doing it from a balcony in another country, or in a quiet Airbnb halfway around the world. For most therapists, that idea sits somewhere between a nice daydream and that could never actually be me. And usually it's the second one because it comes wrapped up in a lot of fear and a lot of question marks like, is that even allowed? How would it work? And wouldn't it all fall apart? And so my guest today has lived right in the middle of those questions and come out the other side. Maria Tsoukalas is a psychologist based in Calgary and the founder of Nomadic Minds. She travels the world while running her practice, and she's now launching a group program to help other mental health professionals do the same. Her whole mission is about helping therapists find more freedom in their lives through travel and clearing up the confusion and fear that keeps so many people from ever trying. So, whether you've seriously thought about this or just felt a little tug of, I wonder, I think you're going to walk away from this one seeing your practice and your life with a whole lot more possibility than you came in with. Maria, welcome to the show. I'm really glad you're here.
Thanks, Liane, and thanks for a very lovely introduction.
Of course, of course. Well, before we really get into the travel side of things, I would love for our listeners to get to know you. Can you tell us a little bit, maybe about where you are even right now and about you and Nomadic Minds?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Maria Tsoukalas. I'm a psychologist based out of Calgary. I'm Greek Canadian, so I'm actually in Greece right now. I have my dual citizenship. My family
Mhm.
is all from here, and so I like to try to get back to Greece whenever I can. So summers are the best time to do that. So right now I'm working from Greece, and we'll be here for about a month or so.
Mhm.
And travel has just always been a really big part of my life because of having family in Greece. We would spend a lot of summers in Greece when I was growing up. And
Mhm.
so travel has just kind of been baked into my life from an early age. And it's been something that's been really important to me, which is why I started Nomadic Minds.
So you're in Greece and you're still seeing clients in your
I am.
practice?
Yeah. Yeah. And so
Amazing.
yeah, it's doable. I have very
Yep.
amazing clients who are flexible with the time zone changes, and people are usually pretty adaptable to small shifts when it's for shorter periods of time. So it's been
Mhm.
really manageable. And at this point, I've been doing this kind of traveling and working while traveling for almost 3 years now. So
Really?
a little trip to Greece for a month or a short vacation for a month or two is kind of nothing compared to the longer term traveling that I was doing.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit, like, what's inspired you to try and live nomadically in the first place? Was there like a moment or did it build over time?
I had always envisioned somehow making it work with traveling full time, or at least traveling a little bit more than the typical 2 to 3 weeks off that we get or that
Mhm.
we give ourselves when we're in private practice. And I just didn't see a way for it to happen. And so I had started
Mhm.
thinking about, okay, like how can I maybe take some time off or take a sabbatical? And then it was actually, I think it was in 2019. So I'm in Alberta. Our regulatory board for psychologists here is College of Alberta Psychologists, and they released their telepsychology guidelines. And there was
Mhm.
this little part of the guidelines that said, as long as our clients are located in Alberta, it didn't matter where our location was. And that was kind of the epiphany moment for me of,
Okay.
oh, we can be anywhere as long as our clients are in Alberta. And I remember racing around to colleagues and showing them the guidelines and being like, I'm reading this correctly, right? Like, this is what this means. And no one really believed me, even though I had emailed CAP and just to verify, is this what this means? But that was to me the moment where I thought, okay, now I can actually start planning this and making it a
Mhm.
reality rather than this just being some sort of dream scenario of maybe someday I'll get to travel more.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit, like, did you give yourself permission like all at once, or did you start to test that in small steps?
Yeah. So once I knew I wanted to do that, I kind of gave myself permission all at once, but it did take a long time to plan it. So
Hmm.
once those telepsych guidelines came through, my first step was, okay, how do I digitize my practice? And
Hmm.
so this was maybe really lucky timing because by the time the pandemic hit, I had actually already completely digitized my practice. I've been taking courses on how to practice online. So when the
Hmm.
pandemic hit, I was kind of ready to go. Whereas I know a lot of other professionals in not just in mental health, but really everywhere were really struggling with, okay, well, how
Yeah.
do we do this now that everything is moving online? But it wasn't really an issue. Like I felt ready for it. And
Hmm.
in a lot of ways, I also think the pandemic made clients more ready to work online. Like I
Yeah.
don't think that people would have been as open to it, working virtually, that is, if they weren't
Hmm.
forced to do it first. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
because we had that obviously awful situation, there were that kind of moment where people realized, like, oh, actually, I can still do really deep, meaningful work therapeutically, virtually. And
Hmm.
now, there's lots of research that supports that as well. But I think I was ready before maybe my clients would have been ready, and
Hmm.
clearly before other professionals were ready too.
Yeah, and I think, as you're talking about that, I think the fear that many therapists have is that practical side of practice. So, can we maybe demystify that a little bit? Like, what does it actually look like for you day to day to see clients and run your practice while you're in another part of the world?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think having first a really solid foundation of a digital practice is really important. So I know a lot of psychologists and therapists kind of stepped into that by force during the
Hmm.
pandemic. I think a lot
Hmm.
of people have stepped out of it or maybe, kind of keep a foot in both worlds. But I would say that that's really important is to have really
Yeah.
strong digital practices, privacy practices, all of those skills and tools that really are important to working ethically and legally, right? And
Hmm.
so that's, I would say, is the first step.
Hmm.
And also you have to kind of check what your regulatory board, your licensure board says about where you can practice and where you can't. I will
Hmm.
say though that for my experience, most regulatory boards, as long as you're only working with clients within the province or state, wherever you are that you're licensed to work, they don't
Hmm.
really care where you are. So I think that is maybe like a big myth buster because I meet really smart, sharp psychologists and therapists who have a
Yeah.
misconception about that. And I'll
Hmm.
tell them, and they still won't believe me, even though I've double checked this, I've triple checked this. I'll say, like email your college, you can check yourself. Inevitably, they get the same answer. And obviously, I'm sure there are states or provinces that vary a little bit with that. But
Yeah.
for the most part, as long as you're just practicing within the jurisdiction you're licensed to,
Hmm.
then you're good to go.
Amazing. So, can you speak a little bit to how do you juggle things like different time zones and scheduling and internet connections, like the actual logistics of running a session while you're somewhere else completely?
hmm so I have really good systems in place now. And it took me a while to figure out what systems were going to work, which is also
Hmm.
why I developed that group program for Nomadic Minds, because I started to see like this is a lot. I can see why people might
Hmm.
think, oh, maybe I would like to go to Greece for a month and work from there, but then get so overwhelmed with how many things there are to keep in mind and all the steps you need to keep in place,
Hmm.
and then just not try it all, which is really unfortunate, right? Because I think as
Hmm.
therapists, we talk to our clients all the time about living their best lives and living in an authentic way and
Yeah.
making, having a balance between work and life. And then oftentimes we're the ones that are working more than our clients.
Hmm.
So all that to say is I think having really good systems and structures in place is the way to navigate all that. And then once you
Hmm.
know what to do, it's actually quite straightforward.
Okay, amazing. And so tell me, what's the difference, say, between traveling for a couple of weeks and working versus, genuinely living and working abroad?
For me, it was an ability to actually travel much slower than I normally would for a vacation. So,
Hmm.
doing some longer term travel and being able to say, I'm going to stay in the city for a full week or more than a week, rather than,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to go here for 2 days, try to see as much as I can, and then go to the next destination because time is limited. It just kind of opens up the way you travel a bit. So to me, a lot of times with vacations, again, they tend to be a little bit more faster paced, even if you don't want them to be. You're trying to
Right.
maximize your time off. But when you're working and traveling for a more extended period of time, you can start
Hmm.
to build a routine in a new place. So for me, some of my favorite things to do are find a grocery store, get groceries for the week, find a gym that I'm going to go to, just wander around the neighborhood that I'm staying in. Those things
Hmm.
that make you kind of give you a better sense of, well, what would it actually be like to live in this city
Right.
versus, just trying to hit all the tourist destinations as quickly as possible. So it really
Hmm.
just, yeah, it opens up travel in a very different way.
That sounds amazing. And like I mean, like from a travel perspective, right? And then I'm thinking, more logistically for your private practice. Can you speak a little bit about, how do you keep continuity and consistency in place for your clients?
So I think part of it will depend on where you're traveling, obviously in
Hmm.
terms of time zones.
Right.
And the easiest for me was I had spent a lot of time in Asia and Oceania. And so the time difference with Alberta actually made it pretty easy for me to keep the exact same times for my clients. So their times didn't change at all for their sessions. I was still seeing them, evenings. I was
Hmm.
just waking up a lot earlier in order to keep that time,
Hmm.
which is also something I normally would not want to do.
Hmm.
But because I was getting to travel, have these other experiences, it didn't feel like a sacrifice to wake up much earlier than I normally would.
Okay.
So that was one thing that helped. But even now, with me being in Europe and my clients being back in Alberta, all that I had to do is just ask, hey, like, would you be okay if we shift from, say a Monday evening appointment to a Saturday or a Sunday morning while I'm in Europe, just because of the time zone change? And
Hmm.
people are more than happy to do that, especially if they're still getting their appointment, right? Like, I'm not saying, hey,
Right.
I'm going to need to cancel your appointment for 2 months. It's like, no, you still get your session just
Hmm.
on a different time and day. And maybe that only affects one or two of your appointments. And so people are actually quite flexible with that as long as you're still being consistent, you're still delivering the same quality of care. And
Hmm.
then when they see that over time, they also can become more flexible, right? Like, it's not
Right.
an
Yeah.
issue because they can see, like, oh, I'm still getting access, to my therapist. I'm still getting the same quality of sessions. Like, it doesn't actually matter.
Amazing. I think, these are some of the questions that, roll around in therapists' minds when they're
Mhm.
thinking about, is this actually possible? And, like what are the things I need to be thinking about? So what were some of the things that scared you the most before you started? And how did those fears compare to reality once you were actually doing it?
Mhm. It's funny because things I was scared of were that I was going to be too busy while I was traveling, and so I cut down my caseload drastically because I didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver with people. And
Hmm.
so I really minimized my caseload. And then once I was traveling, I realized, oh, I didn't need to do that. I was way too conservative about,
Hmm. Hmm.
how many people I kept on my caseload. And so that was for me a kind of unfounded fear of, oh, I'm not going to be able to see the amount of people that I want to see. So I'll scale back. But that wasn't the case. Like, once I started traveling, again, it was quite easy to manage working. Mind you, I also never saw more than 4 clients in a day. So that would
Hmm.
be something to keep in mind too. But that was also because I didn't want to just be working. I wanted to have a nice balance between working, traveling, still having time in my day to go and explore the place that I'm in, the city, the town, the culture. And so part of that balance was important to me as well.
Hmm. Amazing. Was there anything that, came up after you started traveling that you didn't anticipate and maybe was really hard or harder than you thought it
Mm.
was going to be?
I didn't, especially for really long term traveling. So I traveled for over a year nonstop.
Hmm.
And the decision fatigue with that is very real. Like
Mm,
traveling full time like that is kind of its own part time job in terms of planning where you're going next, looking for accommodations, also looking for places that are going to be appropriate for when you're working,
mm,
booking flights, booking other transportation. So I didn't anticipate how much of a cognitive load that would be.
mm.
Which again, it's also helpful to know that it was also helpful that I wasn't working quite as much to help balance that a little bit. But
Yeah.
I think I would, again, suggesting to people for how long they go to be kind of aware that the longer that you're traveling, the more planning is going to come into place while you are traveling.
Mm,
That being said, I also anticipate that not that most people are probably not going to want to leave for a year or longer, right? I think most psychologists or therapists, right, are probably thinking more in terms of like, wow, what would it be like to go to Europe for 2 months and work part time
mhm,
during that, or go to South America? I've always wanted to go. And so when you're
mhm,
doing something a bit more contained, there's
mhm.
much less of that decision fatigue because you're kind of front loading all the decision making and the planning.
That makes a lot of sense. And as you were
Mhm.
saying that, I can see I'm like going, yeah, like trying to find the right place or, yes, I can totally see how that would come up for sure. So, what do you think are the real benefits of long-term travel while you're working?
For me, it's really been being able to recover from burnout. When I left for that long piece of time, I was really burnt out and had been burnt out for a while. And so that was really key for me is just being able to get back to a place of feeling much healthier, feeling energized,
Hmm.
discovering my own hobbies and interests again, having time
Hmm.
for leisure and rest. But I would hope that people aren't waiting to the point of burnout to do something like this. I would encourage other therapists to have more foresight than I did and maybe try to head things off at the pass a little bit. But I think it's important for us as therapists and mental health professionals to
Hmm.
live the values that we're trying to instill in our clients or help our clients with. And so I think even by doing something like this, you're kind of modeling that work life balance that,
Hmm.
again, that we talk to people about all the time, but you're
Yeah,
showing them that I'm a psychologist or a therapist, but I'm also a human being trying to live their life to the fullest.
right. Amazing. Maybe you can speak a little bit about how being on the road and out of the usual routine has changed you as a clinician or as a person. What's surprised you?
I would say the burnout piece and recovering from it was a really big piece of that. But I also felt that there were just a lot of smaller lessons I learned along the way. I mean, for me,
Okay.
I'm a very type A individual. I like to do all the things, see all the things. And that time traveling really helped me to slow down quite a bit in a way that I think was really beneficial for me, not just personally, but professionally.
Hmm.
And I think too that helped professionally being able to have a lot more presence in my session with clients. Like I felt a lot more grounded. I had more time to devote to things like my health, to a mindfulness practice. And I mean, all those things, as we know, right? Like the healthier we
Right.
are, the better we're going to show up professionally for people. And yeah, there were just all these kind of fun little nuggets along the way. Like exercise is really important to me. So just going and
Mhm.
seeing gym culture in different countries was kind of fascinating and like a really
Yeah.
interesting way to understand a culture when you're going to a community gym with all the locals.
Mhm.
There was a lot there. Yeah, it was a very eye opening experience in ways that I didn't expect. And again, I would kind of hope that for other people as well.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Getting that perspective. And I'm just thinking, even from a psychology perspective, just like learning about other cultures and how people live their day-to-day lives will be
Mhm.
fascinating.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience, especially when you're somewhere for a longer period of time. I personally found it easier to connect with locals and people living there because you're either
Mhm.
going to the same areas more than once or you're not just going to tourist areas. And so you get a chance to interact a little bit more with people who live there. And so that was always really fascinating to me as well. Just getting to hear perspectives from people who actually live in a place on what is it like to live there? What are some of the things that they sort of see for their country or the place that they live? And I learned a lot more from those conversations than I would have from a tour, for example,
Oh,
or
of course.
from
Yes.
a
Yeah.
blog online or something like that. And those are also the memories that kind of stay with me the longest too, is those interactions and conversations with people.
Oh, yeah, I can see what you're saying. I'm just imagining in my mind.
Mhm.
And yeah, amazing. So, Maria, what do you most want other therapists to know about working while traveling?
I want them to know that it is entirely possible to do this. You
Hmm.
just need a roadmap. Again, I think there's a lot of fear for therapists, and I think that's because we're just trained through our schooling, through our credentialing process to be a little bit fearful and careful and reserved about things. But you can travel and work at the same time and do it in an ethical way and do it legally and still provide really good care to your clients. And
Hmm.
so I just want people to know that, yeah, I'm there to support, but it's also possible if you want to do it on your own. It takes a lot of time. You're just piecemealing things together. I won't lie to you. So that is, again, the main reason I came up with Nomadic Minds is as I was traveling, I thought like, wow, I would really love for other therapists to know that this is possible for them too, even if they want to do it on a much smaller scale. And
Hmm.
so that's what the group program is about. It's really taking people through step by step. Like, here is everything you need to know from licensure issues, insurance, jurisdiction issues, visas, to even the
Hmm.
practical things like you mentioned earlier, like how do I figure out the time zones? How do I make sure I'm getting good internet when I'm traveling? All those little
Right.
things that feel
Right.
really
Hmm.
overwhelming. The group program covers everything. Mhm.
Amazing. As you were just talking there, the word that jumped out at me was the ethics. Just
Mhm.
from our conversation here, you've clearly done a lot of research on this. Can you speak a little bit around the ethics that you were taking into consideration when you were putting this together for yourself?
I mean, the big one for me was, again, the making sure that clients are getting the best care possible is always going to be front and center for me, and I think for most
Hmm.
therapists. So one was just making sure, are the people on my caseload appropriate for virtual care, or if we're going to have periods of time where there aren't going to be moments of contact for 2 or 3 weeks. So basically
Hmm.
just going over my caseload first and making sure that the clients I have are appropriate for this type of virtual care. Again, because I'd already been practicing virtually full time, that was kind of already done for me. But I think it's an
Right.
important piece for therapists who are maybe seeing some clients in person versus some online, is just making sure that you're going through and really thinking about that in a thoughtful way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that completely. And just thinking back to my own time going through the pandemic and having to switch everything to virtual out of necessity, not choice, like you did,
Yeah,
and
it
having
was like that
to
for most people, though.
it really, really was. Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about the people who are listening to us right now,
Mhm.
and thinking about if there's a therapist who is feeling that pull, but isn't sure that it could work or couldn't work for them, the honest first step that you would point them towards.
The first one I would say is just looking at your practice. So, again, like I said before, I think having a strong foundation for, is my practice digitized and able to go from place to place? I think that's the first step. But even
Hmm.
within that, thinking about what does my caseload look like? What types of clients am I serving? And are those people who are going to be okay to be seen online? This all really depends too on like what kind of travel you want to do. If you're going to be
Yeah.
going for a year plus, you're going to have to do things with a look at things through a fine tooth comb a little bit more.
Right.
But if you just want to start with, hey, maybe I'd like to go somewhere for a month,
Mhm.
I think that's a little bit more manageable. So it's important to think about like, what does your work practice look like now? And then also, what
Mhm.
is your goal? So kind of
Mhm.
having some clarity on those two pieces and what kind of travel do you want to do?
Mhm.
And what kind of practice do you have is kind of the first step.
Got it. Right. Well, that's amazing. Now, I mean, you've mentioned Nomadic Minds here just a
Mhm.
moment ago, and I know you're launching Nomadic Minds Live to help other mental health professionals build this kind of freedom. Can you tell us a little bit about who it's for and what made you want to create it?
Mhm. Yeah, so it's really for any mental health professional. So psychologists, social workers, counselors, therapists, really anyone who's working with clients on that kind of one-on-one basis for therapy or counseling.
Mhm.
And my idea and goal for launching it was just I'd love to be able to give other therapists a little bit of that freedom that I've experienced and continue to experience, and for them to not put off living, right? Because again, I think I see it a lot with colleagues where it's, oh, I'll do that once I'm retired, or I'll do that once things slow down. And there's always a but or a reason to not do things.
Yeah.
And then there's always a workaround for anything. So any obstacle or objection that comes up, there's a way to find a solution for that too. So again, my hope
Mm.
is to just inspire other people to think a little bit more broadly and openly about what their work life can look like and see that
Mhm.
there's much more possibility to have a flexible work life than maybe they think is possible.
Amazing. When you imagine what the next few years for Nomadic Minds looks like, and for you personally,
Mhm.
what does freedom look like from here?
It's an interesting question. I would love to see Nomadic Minds grow and again to be able to serve other therapists in this way. But I also
Mhm.
still really love working with clients one on one. So to me, I think that will always be a part of my practice. So freedom,
Mhm.
honestly, I feel very free right now in my work
Mhm.
life. And
Mhm.
so freedom just kind of looks like being able to continue doing this, being able to continue to come to Greece for a month and still work. Or I was in the Philippines in March and working from there. And so
Mhm.
that's what freedom is to me, is being able to still say yes to these opportunities, to travel, to explore, and still have a thriving career at the same time.
Yeah, I love that definition of freedom. That sounds really good. Maria, thank you. The real gift in this conversation is the permission in it, right? The reminder that the life and the practice that you want might be a lot more available to you than the fear that makes it seem, right? So, before we wrap up, if you had to leave our listeners with one thing to hold on to, what would that be?
I would say just start dreaming about it. Don't cut the dream off at the pass. Let yourself imagine the possibility of what more freedom in your practice can look like. And maybe it's through travel and
Mhm.
nomadic minds. That would be great. But even if it's not, let yourself imagine different possibilities, because that's the only way that you can start to find a path towards getting there.
Yeah, amazing. Now, for everyone who's listening, if Maria's story has stirred something in you, I want to invite you to go and connect with her. Her practice is Nomadic Minds, and the website is nomadicminds.ca. And if you want to explore working and traveling alongside others doing the same, her group program, Nomadic Minds Live, is at nomadicminds.ca/live-group. And she also writes a beautiful newsletter on Substack about the lessons and personal growth that comes from travel. And so I'll put all those links in the show notes so they're easy to find. Maria, thank you so much for being here and for being so open with your story, especially on our podcast.
Thanks so much, Liane. I really appreciate it. And it was really nice chatting with you today.
Amazing. I want to just thank everyone for listening. Thank you for spending this time with Maria and I. And if this episode has opened up a little possibility for you, please share it with a therapist friend who needs to hear it too. And if you haven't, hit subscribe and follow our show because the next episode lands with you on Monday. And take care of yourself. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. And remember, the work you do matters. Keep showing up, keep holding space, and keep building a practice that works for you. If you're looking for practical tools or support to grow your practice with more clarity and confidence, head to buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There's lots waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.